This time I'm going to show you how to make this reading cushion or book cushion. It's a very quick video because these don't actually take very long to make. This one has two pockets. So there's a larger pocket at the top that you can put your books in, and then there's two more pockets at the bottom here that you can put things like your pens, or it could be colouring books and colouring pencils, or it could be your magazine and your glasses or your sunglasses when you're on holiday or if you're travelling. It fastens with a zip at the back, which is the easiest way to fit a zip I think I can show you. And again, it's a very simple, quick but very useful project for you to make. So here's how we make it. Now, because I like my cushions nice and plump, I've cut my fabric to exactly the same size as my cushion cover. So in inches, this is 16 inches square. On the cutting instructions in the description box below the video, then you'll see those instructions in inches and in centimetres as well. But for this video, I'm going to go just in inches as I'm talking. So this is 16 inches square. For my main pocket, I've cut another piece of fabric to the same width, so this is 16 inches across, but this one was 18 inches deep, and as you can see, I folded this in half. And then for my smaller pocket, again the exact width of the cushion cover, but this one is 14 inches deep and folded in half. So you can see the way that those pockets are going to line up. Now the first thing I'm going to do is to actually press these, so I get a nice crease along the fold of the pockets. I don't need that one there at this point. And then I'm going to top stitch just along the fold, and that's going to keep everything in place. So a nice crisp press there. And then let's take the smaller pocket and top stitch. So I'm just stitching about 1/8 of an inch or maybe 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric. It's quite nice if you have a contrast of thread. I could maybe have picked up on the red in my fabric with my thread, just using white for this one. And maybe if you have a decorative stitch, I've got cars on my fabric. I know some sewing machines have cars as a decorative stitch. So that's the pattern fabric. Let's do the same with the plain fabric. So you can use a slightly longer stitch here because it is a top stitch. I'm on 2.6 at the moment. It's not a seam, it's a decorative stitch, so it doesn't have to be tiny. The smaller the stitch, normally the stronger the seam is, but it's not really relevant when I'm just top stitching like this. And then I'm going to take the bottom pocket piece and just trim those bits of thread away and place this over the top. Oh, I'm going to fold and crease the centre point first of all. You could measure and mark that with an erasable pen if you wish, and then place this back over the pocket. I'll pop a couple of pins in there to hold it in place. Now this pocket you can make any size you like. I'm going to sew a dividing line down here to make two smaller pockets, but if you wanted to make pockets for pens or pencils, then you could actually make smaller pockets by making more divider lines. So I'll leave that up to you. You decide how you're going to make that. So starting at the top of the pocket, I'm going to make sure I reverse stitch a few stitches, because if there's any strain on the seam it's going to be there. And sew straight down. And snip. So that's it for the pockets. Now let's pop this onto the front of my there we go, cushion cover, sorry, concentrating then. And all I'm going to do here is to take the pins out and repin through all layers. And I'm just going to stitch down the sides very close to the edge, so within the seam allowance, just to hold all of those layers together while I put the zip into the back of the cushion. You can see this is a very quick project coming together. So really close to the edge. I'm not going to go across the bottom, I don't think it needs it. And you can keep your stitches longer for that one as well. and then back down this side. And I can take the pins out. Then I'm going to take the back two pieces, or the back piece, sorry, and at the moment this is cut to the same width as the fabric, so my 16 inches wide, but this time I've made it a little bit longer. So this is actually about 2 inches longer than the outer fabric, because I want to make room for the zip, which is going to go straight across the centre, and then it will still probably be a little bit too long, but I would rather this was too long than too short, because if it's a little bit too long I can trim it down to size. So same width but a little bit longer, and then we're going to just cut this in half and the zip will go straight down the centre. So let's fold this in half and crease and cut straight across. Normally use my rotary cutter ruler and mat, because particularly when I'm cutting straight lines like this, because you get a nice crisp straight cut, but scissors are fine for this. Then we're going to take these two pieces, and where I cut them I'm just going to sew them back together again. So right sides together. I'm going to measure exactly where I need those to be. So I'm just going to take my zip, which will be a little bit too long, and snip off the end bit. Don't ever do this if you're dressmaking, but for a cushion cover like this, fine to snip off those metal bits at the end. Do be aware though that your zip pull can go straight off the end if you pull it. And I'm going to make the zip about 2 inches or 5 centimetres short of each side. Snip that off there. So I'm not measuring and being precise, I just need that to be shorter. Then I'm going to sew, I'm going to make a mark where the end of the zip's going to be. And I'm going to sew with my regular stitch length to here. I'm going to back stitch, then do a long stitch all the way down here, back stitch, and then carry on to the end. And I'm doing this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So up to that line with my normal stitch, back stitch, go on to a longer stitch because I'm going to unpick these stitches when the zip's fitted. So a nice big long stitch there. You could pin these pieces together if you find that easier. And then back up to the line. Just before then I'm going to go back to my regular stitch length, back stitch, and carry on and snip, and then we'll press the seam open. And then we'll pop the zip in. So there's also different ways of fitting zips. I find this the easiest. You might have seen, if you've seen any of my YouTube's videos on making cushion covers, I've used this one quite a lot. Sometimes it's quite nice to put a fold over the zip so you don't see it at all. But have a look at some of the tutorials for different ways of putting zips in. But this is quick and it's easy and it's very accurate. So let's take my zip and I'm going to face that down, and I'm going to use a glue pen. If you have quilter's tape, that would work as well. Otherwise I'd hand tack or baste this. I wouldn't just put pins in and then go straight to sewing personally, because I find that the zip moves along the pins and I don't get an accurate stitch line. So even if you pin first and then hand tack, it may seem a lot of trouble to go to, but I think it's worth it when you get that really nice neat finish. So the zip slightly open, I'm going to pop this in position and just make sure that the coil, move that up a little bit, is sitting right on top of the seam. When I come to the end here, I'm just going to squish the ends of the zip together. Now if you're using a glue like this, just press it down and just give it a few seconds to stick. It's not a permanent glue. There we go, like so. And then I like to sew from the top. So I can feel where the ends of the zips are. I can feel where that zip slider is. And I'm just going to sew around in a box. And the reason I like to sew from the top is because this is what you see. This is the stitches that you're going to see. So I want to make sure that what you see is really nice and straight. So I'm going to move my needle over to the left hand side. You can put the zipper foot on your sewing machine if you prefer. And there's the end of my zip, and I know my stitches need to be a little bit in than that. So across the end of the zip, and then this should be straight down the centre of the zip tape. So I'm actually running the edge of my presser foot against the seam. That's my straight line. Now I'm coming up towards the zip pull, the slider, and it's lumpy, and I don't want to have to try and sew around it because my stitch line won't be straight. So what I'm going to do is to take my quick and pick. I'm going to lift the foot up but leave the needle down and unpick some of the stitches around my presser foot until I've kind of exposed where the zip pull is. There we go. And then I can also use my quick and pick to just manoeuvre this out of the way. And then we'll carry on sewing. Across the end, because I've used the glue, my fabric's still holding the zip in place underneath there. And then back down the opposite side. When I get so far down, same as before, foot up and just manoeuvre that slider out of the way and then carry on sewing. Then just a quick back stitch at the end. And then I can take again my quick and pick, stitch ripper, however you call it, and undo the rest of the stitches. Careful to make sure that you're only undoing the stitches. It's quite easy sometimes to catch the fabric. So just very gently move this down the stitches and pull them all open. Then you'll be left with lots of little bits that you'll need to take off. If you have a lint roller, one of those sticky rollers that removes dust from your clothing, then that can help, but that's a job for later. Right, then I'm going to undo the zip and put the front and the back right sides together. I'll just make sure that my pattern is facing in the same direction. And as you can see, as I said before, this is going to be slightly longer, so I'll need to cut that down to size. I'll do that in just a second. But we'll have a few pins in here. First of all, through all the layers. And in this corner. And then we're literally going to sew all the way around. And I'm just using 1/4 inch or a 5mm seam allowance. When I come to where the pockets are, I can feel where they are now, they're under here. And I'm just going to backstitch across the top, because again that's going to help strengthen the areas that may have a little bit of stress when I'm putting things in and out of the pockets. So down to the bottom, turn around, and we'll carry on all the way around. Just pop out the pins. And trim off that excess fabric now. I'm also going to cut off the corners. That can help make the corners a little bit more pointy when I turn this through. And then we'll turn this the right side out. So this is why we left the zip open. So let's push out the corners with my, let's get my turning tool. And then we'll put the cushion pad in and then we're finished. So you can see it's actually a very quick project. Through you go, push it out. And then finally this one. I'll just check if we need a final press. I think the back does. Let me just give that an iron. Again, I do need to pick all these little bits off, but we'll do that at a later date. That'll do. One thread there to go. And then we'll push the pillow pad inside. So let's squeeze this in here. You might find it easier to fold it in half and push it in. And again, I do like my cushions to be nice and plump, so persevere a little bit, it will go in. Just a tip for you actually, if you find that your pad is a little bit too fat, but you don't want to make it any bigger, then you can, if you've got a hollow fibre cushion pad, actually make a hole in it and take out some of the hollow fibre. That's absolutely fine. Don't do that with feathers because they will be all over the place. But with hollow fibre, then it's not a problem. Also, you might find, depending what type of pillow pad you've got, it may not go right into the corners. Sometimes, particularly with hollow fibre, the corners tend to be a little bit round. So what you can do is to just take a little bit of toy filler and push that into the corners just to keep it nice and square. No harm in that at all. Just remember that it's there when you take the cover off to wash it. I think we'll have a little bit in here as well. There we go. And then we can close the zip over. And that is my reading pillow finished. So again, I've got the larger pocket on the front that I can put books in, or your children can put their reading books or their colouring books. It's a nice thing not to just to take to bed to read, but it's a nice thing to have if you're travelling. Maybe you've got a long journey in the car, on a train or on a plane or whatever you're travelling on, because you can keep, or your children can keep, not just books in there, or colouring books or diaries or writing books or homework books, but you've got somewhere where you can put pens and pencils and keep them all nice and separate as well. Or it could be something for you if you use these, if you're a hobbyist, to put your sketchbooks and your pencils and things in. So you choose the fabric that you love. If you're giving this as a gift, then you can choose fabric that's appropriate as well. But I just think it's something that's very quick, very useful, and it's going to be very appreciated by whoever you make it for. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I shall see you again soon. Bye bye.